Hello my friends, Hank here, and today we're going to check out a really user-friendly, straightforward technique for painting up high-quality, realistic 1/35th scale US World War II Paratroopers. To begin, as always, we're going to prime up our figure with a coat of black primer to give us a nice, clean base to build up from. A couple things here to note as we dive in. This figure is equipped with the M42 Jump Uniform. This is the early para kit that the 101st and 82nd would have jumped into Normandy with in 1944, not to be confused with the later M43 uniforms that start appearing from Market Garden onwards. If you do want to learn how to paint up those later uniforms, I will link to my video on the subject right here. And as always, I will have a full list of links to all the products used in today's tutorial down below if you need to pick anything up to follow along at home. We're going to start our paint work today with our head. And for my regular viewers, we're going to tackle this a little differently today. We're going to begin by spraying a coat of dark flesh all over the exposed skin of our head. Don't worry about overspray onto the helmet, we will tackle that later. With that dark flesh applied, we're then going to load up our brush with some flat flesh. As we spray this on, we're going to apply a light coat in a targeted spray pattern, spraying perpendicularly to the features of the face. We want to make sure that we're not spraying at an upward angle. What this is going to do is allow the flat flesh to accumulate on the flat and raised portions of the face sculpt, not on the undersides of the chin, the nose, the nape of the neck, etc. And to round out this flesh tone trifecta, we're then going to load up our brush with some of this light flesh and very carefully mist a bit of this at a downward angle over the features of the face. This is going to help pop some highlights on our nose, our chin, our cheekbones. And using those three airbrush steps, we build ourselves up a very nice, simple three-part shading of realistic flesh tone for our paratrooper. Let's go ahead now and add in some details. We can very carefully dot in two eyes using the eye color of our choice. And while we're in there nice and close, let's carefully pencil in some eyebrows. We're still looking a little pasty here, so let's add some warmth to our flesh tone. Using a bit of light rust wash, let's apply a very thin glaze all over our face. We'll then come back with a clean brush and a bit of tap water and remove most of the wash product from the raised and flat portions of our face, aiming to leave just a little bit of color in the details of the mouth, the nose, the eye sockets, and under the chin. And finally, in what seems like kind of an odd addition, we're going to use a very small amount of night blue shader wash, thinned down with some tap water, to add a final all-over glaze to our skin tone. And all that together is going to give us a really nice, authentic, fair skin tone for our paratrooper. Moving on to the detail work of our helmet, let's pencil in the straps with some khaki. The helmet itself we will block in with some US olive drab. Be sure to hit the undersides of the helmet as well. This particular figure has his first aid packet lashed to the webbing of his helmet, so we're going to paint that in with some green gray to add a little variety up on his head there. The main strap on the back of the helmet can be painted in with some khaki. And the front liner strap can be drawn in with some red leather. And finally, we can use some more of our khaki for the actual straps connecting the first aid pouch to the helmet. And to wrap up our work on the head, let's dot in our buckles using some flat black. Beautiful. With our head work complete, let's move down to our figure's body. M42 Jump Uniforms were issued in olive drab number 3, the khaki olive drab, as was a lot of the field gear that this figure is decked out in. To prevent the figure from turning into a big monotone khaki blob, we've got to play with some tonal variations here. To begin, we're going to spray our whole body with some IJN Ash Gray, which oddly enough is the paint used for early war Japanese naval fighter aircraft. But it also happens to work quite well for recreating a faded, lighter OD3 US Jump Uniform. Go figure. With that main color blocked in, the first task at hand, no pun intended, will be to tackle our figure's hands. We're going to replicate that same 3-tone system we used for our head, but this time using a nice, fine brush. We'll start off with our dark flesh base, add a mid-tone with our medium flesh, and add a highlight with our light flesh. Don't worry, I know it looks like he just stuck his hand in some white paint. And we're going to finish it off with our combination of light rust wash and a nice blue shader. Moving on to his M1, let's block in the stock of the weapon with some chocolate brown. And then we can hit all the metal portions with some of our flat black. Our sling can be penciled in using some red leather. This trooper has a scarf made out of scraps of his jump silk, which was a pretty common practice you see in a lot of reference photos. We're going to block that in with some of this Luftwaffe camo green, and we'll come back and add some camouflage details later. And now it's time to move on to a lot of khaki detail work. We're going to move around the body here and block in all of his webbing, his mag pouches, his gear, etc. with some khaki. And now you can start to see why we painted the bulk of his uniform in that slightly more faded tone. It helps all of this field gear stand out a bit from the actual body of the figure. This particular figure is wearing a modified, reinforced version of the M42 uniform with knee and elbow patches added, so we'll block those in with some of that same green-gray we used for our first aid kit back on our helmet. And while we have that green-gray loaded up, let's also spot in some little camouflage dots on his jump scarf. We can paint in the scabbard for his bayonet using some of our red leather to add a nice little pop there. And we'll block in the handle of his entrenching tool with some olive drab. We can also use some of that olive drab to very carefully color in these leg straps. Using some more of our red leather, let's block in his jump boots. And for our finishing touches, let's tackle his rank and divisional patches. We can block in the bases of both of these using some flat black. And while we have our black loaded up, let's go ahead and dot in all the buckles and snaps all over our uniform. Moving back to the divisional patch, let's very carefully draw in the head of our Screaming Eagle using some insignia white. And we'll replicate both the airborne text and the beak of our eagle with some zinc chromate yellow. Our rank patches will go down the same way with a black base followed by a thin white chevron. Our last step before we move on to a bit of weathering will be to hit the stock of our rifle with some of our light rust wash to give that a nice ruddy appearance. Okay, moving on to our finishing steps. Let's spray the whole figure with a coat of gloss varnish to prep for our weathering. We're going to do some super simple stuff here. We're going to apply a sludge wash of our dark dirt enamel product all over our figure, and we're going to use a bit of odorless enamel thinner to help remove any excess and allow the product to flow into just the nooks and crannies of our sculpt. The goal here is to add some artificial shadow and grime in the details of the figure and remove some of this excess from the flat portions where we don't want shadow. Once we're happy with our wash application, let's walk away and let that dry completely. And when we come back with our wash settled, now is a great time to attach our head with a bit of super glue. And to bring it all home, let's spray our figure with a coat of matte varnish to knock down the excess shininess and protect all of our hard work. And there we have it. With just a dozen colors or so, we've got ourselves a nice, authentic 1/35th scale US Paratrooper ready to be added to your next diorama or vehicle project. Thank you guys for tuning in today. If you enjoyed the tutorial, please consider joining the Brew Club today. Your support is tremendously helpful in keeping the content flowing here on the channel. Once again, we've got links to everything we used in today's tutorial down below. And until next time, my friends, be well, happy building. Cheers.